Hello and welcome to One More Word Pod. Thank you for taking the time to listen because time is the one thing you can't get back. Well, taxes, that's the tough one, but time is much more important than taxes. I'm Marvin Williams, not that Marvin Williams, the other Marvin Williams, joined by Matthew Aloysius, Octavius, Ornthar, Gerard, Ryan, the third, the half, a fourth, and a fifth.
Hey, welcome back to the fifth, I believe, episode. I've lost track of time at this point. Time's become a flat circle under the current conditions. It's not good for the algorithm if you say or reference the thing that's going on right now in the world. So much like the Game Grumps, we're going to have to come up with during the off-season, the current off-season.
There we go. Yeah. The global off-season.
Global off-season.
There we go. We win. And prayerfully you're safe, prayerfully you're all good and healthy, and prayerfully everything is going well. And hopefully we can bring in, that was our first podcast burp, I think. Apologize for your kids in the car, and there he is. So hopefully we can bring a little fun, smile, and thought to your life here this afternoon on One More Word Pod. Again, thank you so much for listening. So, Matthew,
yes.
You're the greatest, the best super fan I know.
It's a low bar. That's tripwire. That's tripwire.
I'm just putting it out there. So if I were to ask you to put together a football franchise for me, mm-hmm. and you have to pick your head coach, and I want you to give me your first 5 choices. Who would they be?
Current or all time?
All time.
All right. So we're gonna go Lombardi, Belichick, Tom Coughlin, Landry, Belichick, Coughlin, Lombardi. I said Lombardi already, but Landry.
Right.
And the fifth one is a bit hard because you know what? I'm going to go with Walsh.
Okay, cool. Walsh. All right. So that's your first 5. Okay, so they're off the table. We can't come back to them anymore. Give me your next 5.
Chuck Noll.
Mm-hmm.
John Madden.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to cut through here. Paul Brown.
Great.
Joe Gibbs. Bill Parcells.
Boom. And thank you so much. See, okay, again, for our listeners, this was not planned. I purposely wanted to put Mr. Matthew on the spot because I wanted to see how far he got down the list before he got to the 2 coaches we're going to talk about here today. Joe Gibbs was number 9.
And but that's not that's just instant recall. That's, this is free association, Spalding Gray. So,
which is purposely why I wanted to be exactly that way. Because, and again, understand, it wasn't in some sort of specific order, nothing like that. I just gave you, give me a group of 5, give me a group of 5. And Joe Gibbs, whenever you hear about coaches spoken about, Joe Gibbs is one of the few coaches that's really brought up in terms of best coaches, best franchise leader of all time. He won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks. And he was the leader of a franchise that I'm going to say at its height, and if you want more specifics on the Redskin franchise, we're going to refer you to one of our former colleagues and still a buddy, Mr. Tom Garrett. His Twitter handle is at the Access of Ego. He writes, he can give you the total rundown on Redskin history.
And there's actually a great book. I'm looking at it right on my bookshelf, Fight for Old DC, which is about the establishment of the Redskins franchise in DC after playing in Boston and the whole Lone Star Dietz fiasco that came up a few years ago that Keith Olbermann completely eviscerated.
Yeah. So here you have a franchise with a coach who is rarely put on the pedestal of, man, I want this cat on my team. And you named, so, and again, I went all time because I purposely wanted to go all time. Interesting how coaches who won 1 Super Bowl, maybe 2 Super Bowls, they kind of get mentioned. And oh, by the way, championships are not all equal. No matter how we try to sell it, championships are not all equal because there is no way that you will compare certain coaches who won 1 truly to other coaches who've only won one. And you can't say, well, them both winning a Super Bowl makes them the same. We're just going to leave names out of it right now. But hey, I'm just saying.
When it comes to Joe Gibbs, you look at his body of work and when he coached. Let's excuse the 21st century version for one of the men who will not be named on this program. But when you look at the mid-1980s into the 1980s in general, into the 1990s when Gibbs was there, and he did have three different quarterbacks that he led to a Super Bowl, you look at the Niners, you look at the Giants, you look at the Bears. Those three franchises dominated the NFC in the conversation for nearly that entire 10 to 15 years. And if things were different, if the Redskins were in the AFC, because the AFC in the 1980s were a dumpster fire on top of a trash fire, where the New York Jets with Richard Todd at quarterback could have made the Super Bowl. If you look at some of those Super Bowl teams in the AFC in the 1980s, with the exclusion of the Raiders in the early 1980s, there's not a lot of great teams like Tony Eason. And this is not an insult to Tony Eason, but the level of competition in the National Football Conference compared to the AFC is completely scatterbrained. It's the inverse of the 1970s.
Right. And what that tells you, what that tells us, looking back on it, is it was about building a franchise as an organization. Now, Joe Gibbs is one of those cats who, no matter what he does, he's going to be successful at it, and he's shown that. You know, he's moved on to, as a racing owner, uber successful there, as a businessman, uber successful there. You know, I think of Joe Gibbs the same way I think of someone like Roger Staubach. Like, it's like nothing that those cats could do would probably fail, because one, they adapt themselves for the situation. They learn about what they need to do. They surround themselves with great people, and they do what they need to do. And as awesome as we see them, and as awesome as we think of them, when you meet them and you talk to them and you see that they have that gift to remove themselves from a situation and to give the talent around them a place to be. And Joe Gibbs, for me anyway, is just one of the classic examples of that as a head coach in an era where you had personality more and more starting to be known in the game because of the advent of television, you know, the growing of Monday Night Football, all these other things that are starting to go on. So, but you see that, and look at the three coaches that he beat for his 3 Super Bowl titles: Shula, Dan Reeves, and Marvin Levy. So
3 of the greatest coaches of all time.
Exactly. And when you take a look at where he stands, he did that work with only 12 years of coaching, which to me is a greater number than I could imagine it being, until I looked at the fact that, okay, so Don Shula, let's move him aside because he had 33 years of coaching. Mm-hmm. Dan Reeves himself,
over almost 25, because he coached the Broncos for most, if not all, of the 80s, had that cup of coffee with the Giants in 93, 94, and then made his way to Atlanta and taking a really confusing Atlanta team to the Super Bowl.
Right. 23, I think it was 23 or 24 years for him, 23 years for Chuck Noll, 21 years for Marty Schottenheimer. Chuck Knox, another coach rarely mentioned, 22 seasons, you know, and these are amongst the people on
Bud Grant
being another one that we talked about him before in the earlier episode. Coaches who have had these extensive 22 decades plus, in some cases, Shula, 3 decades plus career. And Joe Gibbs, his numbers, his stats, whatever you want to call it, right up there with those cats with only 12 years of it just shows you the amount of work that he puts into his gig and the amount of success that he generates no matter what he does. And you mentioned the other person, or we mentioned another person, and you brought him up as Marvin Daniel Levy. Yeah, he's another Marvin who actually makes the name work. Right? So here's a cat, 4 straight Super Bowl visits, right? and everybody talks about that, and you can talk about however you want to talk about it. If you want to say it's a failure because he didn't bring back one, that's on you. There's a reason people like you don't sleep well at night. I'm sorry. I just
you've got to look at Marv Levy's career, and if you cannot say he is not one of the greatest coaches of all time. And I know I just ragged on the AFC in the 1980s and early 1990s a little bit. Yeah, it wasn't great, but Marv Levy at that level of excellence, building a Buffalo Bills team that was more successful than the rock pile teams of the 1960s.
Bingo.
More relevant than the O.J. Simpson teams of the 1960s and 70s. Exactly. You look at Marv Levy building that team, getting Jim Kelly to convince him, yeah, you know what? You had a very good in the USFL. You were playing in Houston. You were playing in a better market, but we're building a winning system here. The USFL is essentially dead. Were your opportunity, and allowed Jim Kelly to become a god in Buffalo. Thurman Thomas, you look at that great running back, the great defense they built. That team, if you transported that early 90s, late 80s Bills team into the modern NFL, well, there'd be a lot of personal fouls, but hell, they'd be a contender every single year.
And oh, by the way, speaking of personal fouls, look at what Marv Levy was able to do, and I'm going to say the M word, so forgive me, in that market, at that time, in that division, in that league, this amount of success that he was able to make happen year after year after year after year, when other teams are sending their owners to prison or whatever else is going on, right? Marv Levy is up there leading that organization in a small market, doing his gig, being the consummate CEO, and that's what an NFL coach often is a CEO. And with that amount of success that will never be forgotten, with the people that he had that are great, and you call out every name that I was thinking of, great social and civic leaders too. So they weren't just doing their due on the football field; they were doing their due in the community. And again, if you want more about the Buffalo Bills, another shout out. I'm gonna give it to. There's a podcast all about the Bills, the Mafia Mavens. If you just search that, you can find them. One of their co-hosts is a Twitter buddy, Danielle. How you doing? What's up? At Danielle Renee BB. Place where you can go. You can really get into the history of these teams, and see how successful franchise, no matter how measured, right? They have very few things that go wrong in the structural sense. An ownership group that's strong enough, even if that strength is knowing how to get out the way. A coaching, leadership, and training group that's able to take the talent that they have and help it grow, not just sit on it because this is a system that I have, so this is what is always going to work. Because you take a look at Joe Gibbs. Those three quarterbacks were all very different in their nature, very different in how they saw the game, very different in how they played the game. And guess what? Same success reach. Why? Because you had Joe Gibbs, who can take the talent and let it do what it do, so to speak. Marv Levy, same way. Even though, yes, he went there with the same quarterback, he went there with essentially the same team at a time when it was hard to hold these teams together because we were starting to see the new version of the NFL come into play where what's going on? Oh, that thing called free agency, the whole thing of revenue sharing being shifted around. All these magical things are starting to happen. He managed to, because people say, oh, you want to make money, you want to be a superstar, you got to be in LA, you got to be in New York. And they don't say Buffalo, New York, because they consider that Canada. So here he is in this small market, the same way Popovich and the NBA did it in San Antonio. Levy up in Buffalo, New York, making it happen. And oh, by the way, what coaches did he lose to? He lost to Parcells, he lost to Joe Gibbs, and he lost twice to Jimmy Johnson's Cowboys. So, no matter how we structure that, and right, no matter how we want to say, oh, by the way, these other cats are great coaches, because it's a disservice to what the coaching status or what coaches mean when you leave, especially these two guys. When these two guys left out of the conversation and what they've been able to do. Look at it. Chuck Noll, 4-0 in the Super Bowl, right, with the Steelers. 193 wins in total. Marty Schottenheimer, no Super Bowl wins, but 200 wins. Dan Reeves, 190 wins, but he's 0-4 in the Super Bowl. But people tend to remember him before they remember Joe Gibbs or even Marv Levy. And look at Reeves and Levy, both of them, same record in the Super Bowl. Levy had the smaller market, but in half the time, Marv Levy won 143 games.
It's insane. And it's quiet greatness. I think that's what, for Joe Gibbs and for Marv Levy, it's quiet greatness because they were cooking in markets that were not necessarily, or they weren't the focused coach during a time of larger than life coaches when they had to exist in the same world as Mike Ditka, Buddy Ryan, Bill Parcells, Bill Walsh were looking at all these coaches at that certain level, and they're all other coaches trying to make noise. You look at Reeves and Schottenheimer, both of them were players. Both of them were very successful as players, so they carry that cachet into the NFL. So there's a bigger spotlight on them. Levy and Gibbs were career assistants, essentially. Right. Before Gibbs got the job at Washington, he was the offensive coordinator for Tampa for a season and then 2 seasons in San Diego. So he got to work with Dan Fouts, which is, a big boon for him. But before that, not really much. He was a college coordinator, and there's not really much for Marv Levy outside of his time in Buffalo.
Right. And when you look at coaches who live the game, let's say a coach like Tom Coughlin. Okay, Tom Coughlin didn't move into the professional ranks until way late in his personal life. Brought in by a coach for whom he was older. I think of, and who was the manager of the Pirates who, oh my goodness,
Jim Leland.
Thank you, Jim Leland. Someone else. I think of someone like Jim Leland for the Pirates. I think of Brian Snicker currently with the Braves. Cats who are lifer in the sport, who more than paid dues, were never handed any favors, and didn't get their first professional gig as an assistant or even a head coach until much later in life, and the experience that they brought to the game. Now, granted, talent rises. No matter what, no matter how many favors can be handed out, certain people only get certain jobs for so long, and eventually, if you can't handle a job in a make it or break it league, in a win now, win tomorrow, win the day after that league, okay, fine, you got me a ring today, I want a ring tomorrow too. And more and more now, because the world has this 15-minute memory, to be able to sustain, to have 30, 40 plus year-long careers, whether head coach or not, and to show any sort of success, that's a statement to who they are as people. And also the kind of person that if I'm putting together a franchise, man, I pick up the phone right now and call Tom Coughlin. Call him a disciplinarian. All those words are supposed to be negative, whatever. I don't care. I know that he will put together a method and a system and an organization that's going to give me a consistent winner with an opportunity and a shot, because that's all I need is a shot to get out there and to bring home a trophy at the end of the year.
And when you look at what he did in the short term recently with the Jaguars, kind of build them back up into a respectable franchise, tried to make some good moves. Injuries and the fact that they play in the AFC South really kind of got in their way, because that's a division within its. The AFC South now is kind of like the NFC South in the decade that preceded it. It's a shootout every year. You don't know who's going to win. There's teams that are not necessarily elite at all levels, but have elite quarterbacks and have things about them that are intangibles that can come in and out every year that could spark you. Think a run for like 5 or 6 years, a different team won the NFC South every single year, and I see that trend going for the AFC South.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, what are one of the things that you need to have a successful franchise? He doesn't have ownership.
Mm.
I'm sorry. Ownership makes a huge difference. Who's my favorite franchise? Who's my favorite NFL franchise, Matthew?
That would be the New York Jetropolitans.
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry, but at no point in my life as a Jetropolitan fan have I had solid ownership, solid coaching, and solid management at the same time.
That's what cost the Jets Bill Belichick.
Mm-hmm.
Because Leon Hess had passed away. At one point, James Dolan almost became the owner of the Jets. Ooh. And we could have saw a stadium back in Manhattan. I think that's the reason deep down that Hudson Yards wasn't built. But who the hell knows?
and again, I can, okay, so Matthew knows this because of all our years of working together, even though my primary, Matthew, as part of our GSI broadcast that we would do at WKRB 90.3 in Brooklyn, New York, we did back in the day. He was part of a group that helped me pick a favorite Major League Baseball franchise. And I've settled on the Boston Red Sox. So all this criteria, I'm settled on the Boston Red Sox. Now, I grew up listening to and then eventually watching the Atlanta Braves. So they're still in my heart. Trust me, they're still my franchise. But in terms of me actually taking a stand, buying some gear, the whole nine, Boston Red Sox are my first. My first television memory of baseball is the Boston Red Sox. The guy bouncing down the first base line, fanning the ball. I thought you supposed. After I saw that, I thought you just supposed to do it every time you hit the ball. So of course I did it. Even when I hit a blooper to right field, I'd go down the first base line trying to fan the ball over like my man. And they said, "What are you doing? Just run." Okay, I got you. So the Atlanta Braves, for an extended period of time, no matter how jacked up or whatever the ownership might be, one thing that started happening, especially when we started getting to the 80s, was the ownership was getting out the way.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby Cox running the organization, his people running the organization, and 14 straight league championships, 14 pennants, boom, 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 14 straight. I don't think we'll ever see that again from anybody. If you don't have strong ownership, and that's ownership that's even willing to get out the way of management and or the coaching staff and everybody do their gig, you will have failure because eventually somebody will get in the way. And we talked about how many times owners, because they want the credit, they want the this, they want to be big balling, because they, that movie Draft Day, right? Like, at the end of Draft Day, when Jim Brown's talking to the owner of the Cleveland Browns, he says, "Great job on Draft Day." And the owner had nothing to do. As a matter of fact, the owner was getting ready to fire Kevin Costner, one of the Costner.
Kevin Costner.
That one. Yeah, they all look alike. Was ready to fire that guy. And, he pulls off the magic switcheroo. And if you haven't seen the movie, I won't ruin it for you. And what does Frank Langella say? He says, "Well, I really can't take credit for all of that. Pause, but I will." And that's the kind of owner that drives a franchise eventually into the ground because they won't let the people do what they want to do. They're too busy wanting to take the credit. And in the case of somebody like a Joe Gibbs or Marv Levy, who we spoke about, who had all that success in such a short period of time, I wish I could say that in the league today that we could see those guys like that coaching again. I don't think we will, because now more than ever, because if you have an NFL franchise, you can't lose money regardless of what the LA Rams deciding to look like the LA Rams Supercharger uniform, whatever they're doing. Despite what that ownership is doing, because now they're asking for $500 million loan for their new stadium. Now, we know teams make money off their new stadiums. That's how it's supposed to work. I mean, it's not just what we see as fans either. It's what they get on tax breaks, what they get on utility breaks, what they get on other things, all these other things above. And not to make it too technical, it's pretty hard to lose money. Plus the fact that the league helps you pay for that stadium, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now all of a sudden now they're not playing their players. We talked about that in the earlier episode. People who they owe money to. Now they're asking for a payday loan so they can finish off the stadium.
They were watching Jerry Springer, and they saw one of those Montel Williams payday loan company commercials, and they're like, "All right, yep, we're gonna do that then.
We're gonna do that too." And I'm surprised they didn't apply for one of the global off-season stimulus loan packages too, and they probably did.
Saw the Lakers get one of those off-season stimulus loans too. They gave it back, thankfully, but
they're better at. Now they fit the criteria, but it's a bad look.
And that's the thing about a lot of these owners, whether or not we're going through a global off-season right now. If you're looking at the people who own the Jacksonville Jaguars, not only do they own the Jacksonville Jaguars, they own Fulham in the Premier League. They own analytics companies. They own a wrestling company. They own All Elite Wrestling, which is the number 2 wrestling company in North America right now. And the son of Shad Khan, Tony Khan, is in charge of all 4 of those properties.
So what does
he helps run Fulham. He helps run the Jaguars. He helps run the statistics company that the Jaguars and Fulham use, and he helps run the day-to-day operations of All Elite Wrestling. So when you're looking at ownership groups like that, and you're looking at the LA Rams, the Kroenke family owns the Denver Nuggets still, I do believe, and various other things within and without the world of professional sports. You don't have these single business owners with, limited exception. The Pagula family, who own the Bills now, they own a litany of different companies. They also own the Buffalo Sabres. They bought them a few years ago. I believe the family that owns the Penguins owns the Pirates. So you're seeing a lot of this cross sports ownership, and it's a matter of losing focus on running one business very well, or just putting people in position to run things very well.
Can I give you another option for that?
Of course.
That's a great point. What about the passion for the game itself? The owners like Al Davis, the people who truly live the game that they are now a stakeholder in, on a larger level. Because every person you just mentioned, a great list, by the way, and off the top of your head, even more impressed. Kudos, mad props, respect. I see nothing about passion for the game for them. And the fans are held hostage to that, because the fans are going to buy the jerseys. They're going to buy the replica helmets and the authentic helmets. They're going to shell out the $350 for the game-worn jersey. They're going to shell out the whatever it is, $1,200 for a game-used helmet. The fans are doing that. Meanwhile, the ownership, it's another business.
In the NFL, you see less of that, though. That's the interesting thing. In the NFL, you see less of that. Up until recently, Jerry Richardson, a former NFL player who owned the team and was very passionate about it, and then said a bunch of stupid things and now has to sell the team. Right. The McCaskey family still own the Bears. The Mara and Tisch family still own the Giants. The Rooney family still own the Steelers. The Jets are owned by the Johnson family, and Woody Johnson was very passionate about his team, but he had Dolan disease. He had the Jim Dolan disease, to where he was so focused on making it a success his way that he destroyed the team from within, because of the idea that he wants to be like Frank Langella in draft day, as you said. I want to be the one that's standing center stage, taking the credit, because in other businesses, the CEO is the front-facing person. The person who signs the checks is the front-facing person. And that's what killed other leagues. That's what killed the USFL, because the owners were the ones who ended up taking the front-facing positions, and not John Bassett, who helped develop that league, and I believe he'd helped develop the World League about 10 years before that. Right. He learned from his screw-ups in the World League and tried to build the USFL into a stable alternative. And then a certain orange-faced person bought the New Jersey Generals and decided to take the spotlight away from Doug Flutie and Herschel Walker somehow, and tried to fight the league.
Exactly. And I'm so glad you said it away, because the magic point on what you said, and again, we thank you all for taking the time to listen to One More Word Pod, and however you found us, we're glad you did. Please bookmark us, leave a comment, ask a question. fact check us because we love that. Marvin Williams with Matt Ryan, not that Marvin Williams and not that Matt Ryan, but we're still that Marvin Williams and Matt Ryan. But so what people tend to think of the CEO as a person that goes to the office, looks at the books, makes sure the books are square. No. And that's just it. The CEO doesn't even sign the checks. Who signs the check? The CFO, the chief financial officer, the person who handles the books, and the CEO, the NFL CEO wants to take credit for that. And talking about bad NFL CEOs and bad ownership, the NFL doesn't have the lockstep and barrel on who's bad owners. I mean, you look at hockey is replete with them. A cat like Harold Ballard, right? 47 counts of fraud. God knows how many years of prison. He owned the Maple Leafs for a while. John Spano for the Islanders. I think he's still in prison.
If you haven't seen Big Shot on a 30 for 30, once we're done with this podcast, I'm probably popping that on. He almost bought the Dallas Stars.
How could the guy? Wait now, $5 million is nothing to sneeze at, especially when you don't have it, right? But what was it? He inflated his value from 5 million to over 230 million or something like that.
Somewhere in that area, yeah. And the fact in the 1990s someone was still able to get away with that is what happens when you're not able to cash your first check?
And oh, by the way, my thing is, and I just got to say it, how did he think he's going to get away with bouncing checks all over the place like you just said? I mean, at some point, dude, they're going to realize the money ain't there. You ain't got it.
Did he think, oh, once this, once we start winning games and start making money, I could start paying everybody?
He thinks it's a lemonade stand instead of, I mean, she who is brilliant and beautiful, that's our favorite team, right?
Yeah.
You want to press the nuclear button? Sorry to use that phrase. All you got to do is say Spano, and it is on. It is. There's no coming back from that. There's going to be damage beyond repair. Allstate's going to say, no, we're dropping you, dude. That's crazy. I don't care. I don't give a darn what Serrano says, but we don't want you in here no more. I mean, it is the way it. I mean, that name is foreboding, bruh. But the reality of it is, these people who live at that level, in that space, in that whatever, they managed to do it some kind of way, and some of them even managed to stay out of jail or prison, whatever you want to call it. And I think now more than ever, I think we live in a place where the lines are totally blurred, and that's, to me, that's the saddest thing. On top of it, to bring it back and put a bow where we're talking about from how bad ownership can affect a team, where we can see a cat like Joe Gibbs, we can see a cat like Marv Levy having to work with an owner like that and going, you know what? No, thank you. Why? Because I'm great at everything I do, and I ain't got to be great around you because you're not going to give me the room to do it and let me do it my way. Again, we thank you for taking a listen to One More Word Pod and what we're talking about here today. Marvin Williams joined by Matthew Ryan. We got more stuff coming up for you, like the new league, what that means, how it means, and what it's going to sound like. Coming up next, One More Word Pod.
And now we go back in time for this GSI Classic.
When you get a guy like Jerry Jones sitting at a bar saying the stuff that he's saying about Bill Parcells, we're not going to go into what he said because I don't even want to give him that credit. As a matter of fact, we're going to give out another award. We're going to give the same award again because Jerry Jones has now made it to the list of he who shall not be named. He has now made it to the list because we felt like he didn't respect the game, the history of the game, and the names in the game. But now he has shown that not only does he not care, he is going to go out of his way to tell other people, even people he does not know, that he does not care. Hit me up, baby.
We flew into San Diego, and I asked the manager, could I go home? Because we had an off day. So he said, yeah. So I took some LSD at the airport because I knew where it would hit me.
I love Doc Ellis.
That's two. That's now you got the 10th. Now he who shall not be named, who is the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, Listen.
Dan Snyder Sr. Let's leave it at that.
Listen. Even though you feel that way, you have to know that now, no longer are the sports talk guys, and women, apologize, the renegades. Anybody with a cell phone is now a member of the media. They just got through finding out who put the bombs on the train in England because of people's camera phones and other people who hacked the street camera websites to go back and see who got on and off those trains and buses. So anybody now is a member of the journalistic community. It's back to where it used to be.
It's new media.
So at any moment, listen, I've been at those events where you would see an exec from a company sitting down and somebody will walk up to them. If the person walks up to the exec, actually has a drink in their hand, the exec will get up and walk away because he doesn't want anybody taking a picture of them next to someone with a drink in their hand who might be a little inebriated. They don't want that on their Facebook. They don't want that on YouTube. They don't want people who are savvy and they really know that stuff. They are very careful. Like, I'm very careful about what names I give out for word situations. Why? Because it matters.
The world of sports media is now 140 characters or less. No matter where you are, no matter what you do. I have my iPhone in my hand right now. Mm-hmm. I could broadcast to literally the entire world what's going on. If I meet someone or I see something, you know what? I might post it, I might not. I personally, if I was in that situation, I don't know what I would do.
Right. But here we go, Matthew. You're also the kind of person who will not sit at a table with somebody like Jerry Jones and try to secretly record him on your phone saying bad stuff.
I'll just yell at him.
Right. That's right. And it's what I'm getting at. But there are a lot of people who realize, wait a minute, I can make a couple of bucks with this.
Everybody's looking for the TMZ money.
So, exactly. So that being said, you got to be smarter than that, Mr. You. And Mr. You're now on the list. You're now our fourth person who shall not be named because you've
there's
now...
a basketball player.
Yeah, and there's another basketball player. And there's a baseball player. And now there's a football team owner. So listen, ye who shall not be named who is a football team owner, shame on you because you've now made real what everybody thought you were before, and that is someone who cared nothing about the game, the history of the game, or the people who worked for you. That being said, sayonara.
I am Marvin Williams, joined as always by the inevitable, the indubitable, the incredible, the one and only Matthew Aloysius Octavius Onthar Gerard Ron the third, the fifth, and a half, and a second.
We are available for digital bat mitzvahs, bar mitzvahs, and a Zoom bris. For more information on that, follow us on Twitter at One More Word Pod. Also on Facebook at One More Word Pod. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify. Now we're also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher. Coming soon to iHeartRadio, the iHeartRadio app. We are on the TuneIn app right now, and a whole bunch of others. Coming soon also to Pandora. Awesome. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, more than likely you'll find One More Word. Be sure to like, subscribe, as Marvin said earlier in the show, and leave a comment below. If you've got a question about pro football and you think we're the people smart enough to answer it, because we've spent a lot of time in libraries and yelling at game film.
When you need help, if that's the case, but call anyway.
But Marvin, before we get into our next segment and what you've got, I have a question for you.
Absolutely.
Because we were talking about the modern owners and owners who are not focused or who are not effective. And we were talking about coaches like Marv Levy and Joe Gibbs not working for owners like that. Do you think that in the current world, in the current conditions of the National Football League, could we see a Hank Stram or and excluding Bill Belichick, building a Tom Landry, Hank Stram, or Chuck Noll kind of system that is sustainable for over a decade? Because you look at NFL coaching now, and the average shelf life, I believe, is halfway through your second preseason game, depending upon how good the kickoff is.
Right. Absolutely not. And I'll tell you why. Because we talked about a little bit about the new era of free agency, and that bell will never be unrung. A lot of players who, from the time that they're 7 years old and they're 30 pounds bigger and 4 inches taller than the other kids, are being told what type of professional life they're going to have and what they're going to be able to do. Very few of those type of kids who come up and make it far enough to go to the big D1 school and to go to or wherever they go, and they get looked at by the NFL and they have what it takes to get there. Very few of them have what it takes to be the team player and be the soldier for the general. So Hangstrom today, Paul Brown today, I can't see them working from the player standpoint. And I know your question was about the ownership, but certainly not from the ownership standpoint. Why? Because can you imagine them trying to do a Kool-Aid commercial with Hangstrom? I mean, really? You know,
I could, because it would be hilarious.
You can see now, Kool-Aid. It's cold. You're thirsty. Drink it. Okay.
We're matriculating the drink downfield, boys.
So, you know, that's true. Hangstrom was a bad example for me today because he did have personality.
Paul Brown for Yoo-hoo.
Yeah, exactly. It's chocolate. It's a drink. Yum. Come on now, Mr. Brown, with more emotion. That was emotion. I'm out.
Can you articulate the power I, and then we're there 4 hours later?
Oh, absolutely. And wait, 4 hours later, before he even starts to diagram the play, because he's giving you the history where it comes from. But it is so absolutely not. I just can't see coaches like that working today. From, you know, they were disciplinarians. They were, you know, they wanted not just the talented player, but they wanted the match of the physical talent with the mental acuity. And there are just certain things that they looked for that I don't think they would get today. And I think the second that an athlete tweeted out something about whatever, about their contract or whatever, it'll be over. And we know it's flipped now. The ownership, they do their dance through the commissioner. The players do their thing, and the coach is sort of like you're the sort of daycare manager in between, and your job from the ownership is to keep the players happy and to keep them playing well. And from the player standpoint, you want to keep us happy because we can keep taking money from the owner. And that's, you know, like you said, you know, throwing Bill Belichick out of it. That's pretty much how it feels today.
And that's why coaches like Nick Saban or other college coaches have not been able to be successful at the pro level. I read Nick Saban, a memoir written about Nick Saban a few years ago, and that was the biggest level of consternation. In college, you're able to mold these guys. You have specific things to where you are the last line of defense. You are in control. And we can argue whether or not the NCAA is a decrepit system that needs to be taken down from the inside. But that's another podcast. You see,
that's a serious, dude.
It's, for me, the successful NFL coach now is dependent upon so many things, and we're seeing so many young coaches now. We're seeing McVay, we're seeing Schottenheimer, my goodness, Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, I'm sorry, they all look alike.
Yeah, and John Gruden, who looks like he doesn't age. And there's some younger coaches, younger systems being in place in the NFL. Cliff Kingsbury and his fancy home. What will the successful NFL coach look like in 5 years? Are they going to be going like these college coaches from school to school, from program to program, owner to owner? Or are we going to see coaches take up roots? Because there's not a lot of those kinds of coaches anymore.
And I don't believe we have leagues that even need coaches like that anymore. And by saying that, here's what I mean. We talked about the 15-minute social memory. So if my coach looks like he can be on, you know, one of the coaching calendars, you know, kind of like the fireman calendar, you know, if I have a coach who looks like that, who can give a solid and effective press conference and still looks like that he can hand somebody a rose in the season of The Bachelor, I have a winner because I have something I can market. And we talked about how the league, and it was funny, you actually, and this actually put a lot of thought in my head when you said it. a team being built by, I'm going to say the word non-football people, but I don't mean it in terms of the biblical sense of non-football. I mean people who were Madden GMs and sabermetricians and whatever other fancy metrics person you want to name. But these people now becoming the main decision makers, or the primary decision makers, sorry, better phrase, probably, for these NFL franchises, right? So if I'm willing to do that, if I'm willing to go out and hire a Matt Ryan to be my GM because you know how to handle the cap in Madden or whatever, right? And you've shown, year after, you've shown a few years and, that you're able to do that successfully and build winning franchises. Okay, fine. I give you a shot in the real world because numbers are numbers, right? Players still have to play, but numbers are numbers. So the idea of me getting you for that, wow, how big a stretch is it? When if I can hire a good-looking coach to come in here, and I'm using the phrase good-looking in the literal sense of the phrase good-looking coach, to come in here to be my face, to be my whatever I need, for if I can get 5 years out of them, if I can get 5 years of payback, it's worth it. Because why? My team, my franchise is relevant. I reach an audience I might not normally reach, and I'm getting attention because of this hot coach that I got. And I know that comes across sexist. I know that comes across a bunch of different ways, but it's starting to feel like that the league that we have now, the leagues that we're seeing now, are going toward total marketability across the table. And to see, yeah, coach needs to be smart. Yes, the coach needs to have yes, the coach needs to understand the game. Yes, know to get respect from the players. I get that part too. But then let's really look at it for 1 second. How many of the top-notch players, and again, we're going to remove Belichick out of this because you have to, right? Because that's kind of like the answer, not the answer. But how many of these players truly have that kind of relationship with their coaches anymore anyway? Because it's all about that next paycheck for so many of them. Rare is the case where you'll see a Drew Brees and Sean Payton in New Orleans have that sort of connection. Rare is a case where, and I'm trying to think of another situation that's even close. And again, I'm not going to say Belichick and Brady because that's always the answer. But I can't think, Ron Rivera gets released or fired, whatever you want to call it, by the Panthers. He ends up in D.C. He needs a quarterback. Guess who needs a job now? His old quarterback from the Panthers. And Cam Newton is homeless, is jobless. And here is his old coach for however many years he was his coach in Carolina, who needs a quarterback, right? And DC now needs somebody.
Well, they do have Alex Smith, and they have the person they drafted last year.
Like I said, they need somebody.
Oh, let's not rag on Alex Smith. He's a fantastic quarterback. He's just one of those guys that was beset by 87 offensive coordinators and no real vision until Andy Reid was able to pick him off the woodpile. And is this really a new trend, though? Because if you look back at the advent of pro football, the people that were the face of the franchises in the early days outside of star collegiate players were the coaches. Paul Brown had the team named after him.
Right.
And he was a legendary coach because of high school football in Ohio.
This is true. But guess who's very different from then to now? The audience they're trying to reach. Back in the day of Paul Brown, if you had 4,000 people into a stadium, that's a good Sunday, right? Mm. Now we want how many? 60,000 people?
Yeah, 80 maybe.
And you're not
going to FedEx Field, pardon me, you can fit the entire population of Montana.
Right. So are we going to find that many people who, okay, we talked about that person who wears the New York jersey, jacket, that he's had it since they first rolled out on the market, and the only thing that's left is part of the C and the bottom part of the I, and that's it. But he's going to wear that, and he can tell you every single player, every single trade, every score of every game from every season, who they drafted, when they drafted. You get to that. Okay, so that's you and that's me. We're the minority, Holmes. We're not reaching for. They have you and me.
Yeah,
hockey has you. We talked about this. I love hockey, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love hockey. I love cricket. I now with the advent of this internet thing, which is why I'm glad you introduced me to that last week. That is really awesome. All the stuff I'm finding, but it's like I can watch cricket matches all over the world. And I'm gonna go do that. By the way, I'm still leading in my NHL fantasy league. By the way, I'm number one because we've been phone forever, but I've been number one all season. I was like championship, and now it's taking me. But anyway, so they have you and I, right? How do I reach the person who I read? You know what? We talked about that tweet where a person said, is it just me, or have the Raiders always been in Las Vegas, or is this new?
Yeah.
That's the person they want to get, right? That's the person they want to get on the regular basis. And guess what? That person obviously is not paying attention on Sunday, if at all, to all of a sudden think that the Raiders have always been in Las Vegas and wonder why the world is going stupid all of a sudden because they're talking about the Las Vegas Raiders like it's brand new. Hey, lady, it's because it is brand new. So
and this is an old marketing thing, but there are three levels of fans. There's the diehards, the casuals, and then those who kind of just are there for moments. The diehards will watch every game. They'll obsess over every stat, or they'll obsess over every year. This is someone who has a framed photo of Bobby Bonilla legitimately on his wall in his home. I have a framed photo of Bobby Bonilla in my home studio.
Second smartest businessman I ever met in my life.
Yep. And then there's the fans that will watch the biggest game of the week. They'll watch the Sunday night game. They'll watch the 4:00 Fox game. They may watch Monday Night Football if they need some Dramamine.
Because everyone else is watching, they're going to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Then
the social movement.
And then there's the third fan who will watch during the Super Bowl and have no understanding, but will know who Tom Brady is because of a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. And that's the fan the NFL wants the most, because that's the fan they know if they get them, they have ins to so many other different parts of the marketplace. And the NFL, for 25 years, it feels like, has been looking to get that fan and have been working aggressively on turning the NFL into a FOMO moment every single week.
Yeah, right.
Fear of missing out.
Bingo. And so if I'm going to do that, okay, so then let's go back to where we started with this, right? That fan is not going to be attracted to a Bill Belichick. That fan is not even going to be attracted to a Bill Parcells. That fan is not going to be attracted to someone who can come in, a Hank Stram, a Vince Lombardi, somebody who can come in and who can frame that franchise and be completely businesslike about it and corporately uninterested. And these are that fan is not going to be pulled by that sort of person. Where the people who know the game and appreciate the game for the game will always gravitate toward that person. Why? Because we understand the genius of what they do, and we appreciate the genius of what they do. And oh, by the way, before you even started, One More Word Pod, we thank you for taking your time to listen to us. We so appreciate it beyond words. And for those of you who know us from GSI days, you know we're not talking about gender here. We're not talking about anything like that. We're talking about people who know the game, and people who appreciate the game for it is, versus the person who will sit around and say, and I quote, "Wow, is it just me, or has the Raiders always been in Las Vegas? Why is everybody acting so crazy?" See what I'm getting at? So, this is about anything other than people who know the game versus people who don't know the game. So I got the people who know the game. I got them already. And go, by the way, no matter what they say, the last two Jet coaches have not been my favorite thoughts for coaches for my team. I watched them anyway because it's my team. But guess what? And let's even go back. after Herm Edwards, Rex Ryan was okay. There was a person between Herm Edwards and Rex Ryan. I don't even want to talk about him, but Herm Edwards, got a lot to say for his personality and for what he meant. But he was a football guy, right? He was a people guy, but he was a football guy. Then that other person came in. Okay, flush that. Then we get Rex Ryan, who basically makes all kinds of headlines for talking the way he talks and sexy Rexy and the whole nine, whatever. And he had personality, and then he started losing the weight, and then he really became sexy Rexy and all the people, But at the end of the day, what was it? That's my favorite phrase. He was a football guy and a football coach who knew and understood the game. But be honest with you, you weren't gonna sell calendars with Rex Ryan on it. So now this new guy, you're not going to sell calendars with him either because he looks like something went wrong in a Daffy Duck cartoon. But he's closer to the sort of age range, the personality, the kind of modern grunge Keanu Reeves meets Donald Duck look that they look for in coaches now. And there you go. So we goofy eyes aside, Jets have a winner. Oh, I can't believe I said it like that. But the
it's the Jason Garrett thing. Jason Garrett was Sean Payton, Jason Garrett, McVay over in LA. They were athletes. They were people who played the game, played in the NFL, and have a look. The Tom Cables of the world, the Tony Speranos of the world, the Romeo Crennel, Charlie Weisses of the world aren't going to get the same kind of respect and the same kind of burn that these other coaches are going to have. And also the process of becoming an NFL head coach now is intensely different than what it looked like even 10 years ago. Right. When you're seeing certain people saying Peyton Manning should be a head coach in the NFL, and I'm not going to argue against it, but this kind of trickles into baseball. When you look at baseball, Carlos Beltran was the manager of the New York Mets for 5 minutes, and I don't think he never coached at any level. He retired like 2 years before. I think he was a special assistant to the Yankees in 2019, but and this goes to the NFL too. They're stealing the college football coach model.
Right.
Our friend Coach Curry was the coach at Alabama. Why was he the coach at Alabama? Because he played at Alabama.
Right.
And you see that all over.
He played for a legendary coach at Alabama. So, there's that natural tie-in that you see. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Not a problem at all. Yeah, he played under the Bear. And you look at Jason Garrett, he was the backup quarterback to Troy Aikman in Dallas.
Right.
Sean Payton coached under Bill Parcells in Dallas. I believe he also was the offensive coordinator for the New York Giants under Jim Fossil. So there's experience there, there's knowledge there, but there's also that marketability. We're in the PSL era. Every single team, all 32 teams in the NFL, are looking to sell those PSLs. And when teams are building within the last 5 years, 8 years, we've seen stadiums pop up, new stadiums for almost every major NFL media market.
Right, except Chicago. They just keep renovating. And
Phillies had the same one for about 20 years. Gillette Stadium is about 20 years old. Miami, that stadium, you're going to need an actual hurricane to take that stadium out.
You know what? I don't even think a hurricane. I think a hurricane will come and all of the bottom part of Florida be missing, but the stadium will still be there. Like it'll be water in between, Daytona Beach and Cuba, but then there'll be a little island that'll be the stadium. That stadium will still be there because I think you tear that stadium down. I think so many drugs have been done in that stadium. I think that stadium's high.
While Marlin Stadium, which is in the middle of town, by the way, you couldn't pay people to go inside that modern venue.
Right.
It's fish tank behind home plate, which was
well, go figure, right? So again, that idea of the modern coach and what that means to have a coach to fit a certain mold, to see the Hank Stram or Paul Brown. I don't see those days happening in the foreseeable future. I just say it that way. In the foreseeable future, I don't see it happening. And again, with One More Word Pod, we thank you so much for taking the time to listen. I'm Marvin Williams. That's Matthew Ryan. Not that Marvin Williams, not that Matt Ryan, but still Marvin Williams and Matt Ryan. And we thank you for taking the time. The one thing you can't get back, one piece of advice, as we're going to eventually talk about more things concerning the league. Send us your questions. As a matter of fact, the next caller who calls the station right now. Oh, I'm sorry. We're not on the radio.
Yeah, we don't.
Flashback.
718-368-4572. That's 718-368-4572.
So again, we thank you for taking the time to listen. Don't let Jason Bourne borrow your car. And we're going to have more topics for you here in the future, including the new leagues on One More Word Pod.
And now we go back in time for this GSI Classic.
I'm proud of the Mets fans because we're going to say now goodbye to, and let's do this right now, our Doc Ellis, Player of the Week, of the Century, of the Day, of the Decade, of the Minute, of the Year. This will be our 9th award given out to the Doc Ellis Player of the Day, of the Weekend, of the Year, of the Month, of the Century, of the Week. And that's going to be to the one and only New York Knicks. And it's a New York Knicks season. So here we go.
The Doc Ellis Player of the Week.
We flew into San Diego, and I asked the manager, could I go home? Because we had an off day. So he said, yeah. So I took some LSD at the airport because I knew where it would hit me.
That's it. That is the New York Knicks season right there.
It's bad acid trip.
You know?
In San Diego.
Wait, you know what? At least Doc Ellis enjoyed his acid.
Yeah.
Because watch the Knicks do what they did. Oh, sugar. Go out the way they did. Treat the fans the way they did. Because now, and I heard something I never thought I'd hear. It was a writer say, oh, by the way, before I finish, the numbers on the Mets tickets are not public yet. And I wasn't going to sit on it. The idea about the Knicks, who should have not sold out the rest of the season.
They should have been like the Nets fans, bags on the head.
I heard a writer who covers the Knicks say that they're playing out the string like they've done for the last 10 years. And I was like, wow.
And welcome back, or welcome to One More Word Pod. I'm Matthew. No, I'm not Matthew. I'm Marvin. I'm Marvin Williams. That's right. Okay, here we go. I got it now. I'm Marvin Williams. And as always, I'm joined by Matthew Elowich, is like Tavish Onthar, Gerard Ryan, the third, the half, the fourth, and the fifth.
Hi.
I'm glad we worked that out.
Yeah.
So speaking of confusement and identity, we thank our listeners for taking the time to take us with you on your jogs, on your walking your dog, or out to dinner with your people. If you're out and taking a listen while you're throwing down some risotto, that's awesome. But we're able to do that, and you're able to do that, and that's great. But it looks as though all of our leagues are going to have this new modern look about them.
Yep.
And that look is no fans in the stands, or virtual stands in the fan. And worst of all, and I'm saying worst because, yes, I'm already made a judgment about this, is artificial fan noise.
Yeah. There have been talks about that. I work within the world of professional wrestling and combat sports. That's what I do for money. And when I watch a UFC fight, I honestly think it's enhanced with the lack of fans.
Right.
You can hear the action better. You can hear the coaches. The experience as a TV viewer is almost better. And also MMA fans are garbage people. When it comes to baseball, football, the big four in the United States, the crowd noise to me is secondary to the actual game and the experience. When you talk about artificial crowd noise, I'm just going to view that as a distraction. And also, if we're pumping that into the actual stadium, then at that point, you're just letting anything and everything happen, and you're allowing a team to basically control how the momentum of the game is going.
Didn't Atlanta Falcons lose draft picks for that?
They did. The New Orleans Saints, the Seattle Seahawks.
Boom.
There's so many. What was that?
The Indianapolis Colts. It just keeps going and going and going. Because and you're right on the mark there. Okay. Here we go. There is an organic nature to fans in the stand. Now, Matthew, you know me. I'm a radio guy anyway. I like listening to the radio. I prefer, yes, I watch it on TV, and you've got me doing more of that than I've ever done it before. But for me, I will find the game on the radio. I will listen to it on the radio and just play the game in my head, and I'm fine with that. And I get that's a minority thing. I get that.
But they work so hard on those color rush jerseys, Marvin. You gotta look at them.
Oh my God! The first time I watched a Thursday night game, sidetrack here on a side note. The first time I watched a Thursday night game and they had those popsicle-looking uniforms, I think I lasted 7 minutes.
I love them.
I think it was.
This is kind of where the corner. This is the corner where me and Marvin somewhat differ, because I love absurd uniforms. I'm looking at my bookshelf right now, Marvin, and you know what book I'm looking at?
What you looking at?
California Golden Seals. As long as Marvin and I have known each other, I've had an unhealthy obsession with the California Golden Seals uniforms. And I've been searching for over a decade for that green and gold disaster. And I love the Oakland A's of the 1970s jerseys. I love those weird Chicago White Sox uniforms. Mm-hmm. I love but yet again, I'm a New York Giants and Las Vegas Raiders fan. So my two favorite uniforms are essentially block letters, single color, no personality whatsoever. And what was your take on the new Jets uniforms and the new Jets helmets?
I refuse to look at them. I am still that jersey, that uniform that the team won Super Bowl III with is still my uniform. Even that one they went to with the whole jet spell out looking like a plane, and which by the way took me 2 years. Oh, that's supposed to be a jet. I get it now. But give me that old school oval A with the Jets in it, and just give me that all day long. White or green shirt, green pants, or white, whatever. Just I'm fine with that. And that's just. But that new thing, the whatever they call it, I know there's a name for it, and I'm sure it's really. No, not even a color rush one. They have a name for like the new Jets jersey look. And I forgot what it's called, and I don't care to even remember what it's called, but I hate it. But it's my team. I'll never buy one. But I will still support them in it. But I'm telling you, man, that color rush thing where on Thursday nights where it's like matching uniforms, if you're colorblind, it must make you look nuts because it all looks like they're wearing the same thing. The first time, I swear to you, I think I never got out the first quarter. I never got the first time. I said, what the heck are they wearing? Please, God, let them change. And they didn't. So I turned up to you and just listened to it on radio. But so no, I am not the new look. No, that ain't happening. That not for me. Not everybody else. That's your thing. You love it. You enjoy it. But what's interesting is, and as you so well put it about so the fan experience, right? But now we're going to artificialize that. So, okay. How many times have you experienced where the home fans booed the home team?
As a New York sports fan,
every
single sporting event I've gone to since I was born.
Exactly. So that the organic nature of that kind of event, right? You know the day that I almost stopped becoming a Jets fan. And that was when Chad Pennington got hurt. He goes down and the home fans started cheering because he was trying to get off the field. The man is hurt. And I'm telling you, it took She Who Was Brilliant and Beautiful 30 minutes to talk me out of not just throwing all of my Jet stuff in the trash, because I couldn't believe that my fans, my fellow fans, were cheering for one of our guys to get hurt because for whatever reason they decided they don't like him anymore. And I mean, and it still bothers me to this day that happened. those are those organic moments that you cannot artificialize that. You know, if every time the home team does something great, there's a cheer. If every time the home team does something bad, there's a come on, dude. It just leave the noises out of it. Make it like a basketball game if you want to. Play music in between the plays until they get up to the line of scrimmage.
And they already do that. Like the gamification, the programmization, pardon me, of pro sporting events. As someone who worked as a public address announcer and has had to look at those format sheets and has had to coordinate for major colleges, like I've worked in Division I, I've worked in Carnesecca Arena, and if you look at the format sheet of a Division I women's college basketball game,
right,
you will see every media timeout, every time there is not a ball dribbled on the court, there is something being said. There's something being promoted. Even in college volleyball. Like, I've done work for Columbia University. I'm not trying to brag. I just live in New York. So these colleges are like 20 minutes from the house. When you're working, whether it's a Columbia, John Jay College over on the west side, anywhere where there is college sports to be played now, even at the CCA level, or not even the Catholic schools are doing it now. They're hiring announcers. They're having music played. There's always sound. There's always motion. There's always something going on in one of these games. You don't need to add that artificial noise, whether for the viewer, that stuff's going to be there. When you're watching the game on television, yeah, it's great to hear the cheer, but when you're being worked, I feel like the psychology behind it is so subversive, right, and so antithetical to what you're watching and what you're experiencing, that you're taking not the honesty out of the game, you're taking the realism or the raw emotion, as you said, out of sports.
And you know what? I'm going to dance with you. Leave honesty in there. You're taking that out too. I'm going to dance with you on that one because I'm so with you on this.
Well, I stopped myself from saying honesty because sports is narrative driven. I saw somebody talk, Jonathan Snowden, a great writer, who said sports are not a morality play, but they are. And I can speak to that with a certain level of authority because my thesis paper, and I feel like I've brought this up on the show before, was about sports in society, sports as essentially as a religion. You've read one of those you read and graded one of those papers many moons ago.
Yep. It was awesome. And it was, and that's why I want you to expand it even more. And that was one of the papers. I remember that paper specifically because I remember saying that needs to be a book because it's so on point with, again, the New York Knicks fan with that worn out windbreaker that I can see is part of 2 letters and he still wears it. Why? Because that's his team. Good or bad, whatever, that's his team, and that will never change.
No, and it's that 2 a.m. Jerome from the Bronx calling into WFAN kind of caller.
Exactly.
It's the person who would poison trees at Toomer's Corner because they're insane people. To be a sports fan, you need to have a certain level of fanaticism that is only seen in certain pockets of the world where it's deemed illegal.
Exactly. And to that point, you cannot manufacture that. And even take it a step further, and I don't think better, is you look at the idea of them even digitizing fans in the stands for the viewer at home. I'm going to be frank about it. The times I do watch on TV, I'm not looking for someone in the stands. I'm looking at the action on the field. Whether it's empty stadium or not, it's not going to change my experience if I do watch it on TV. So why does it have to be like Palpatine in the middle of the Senate in Star Wars and he's raising up his hands and all of a sudden all the people stand up in their pods, hey, no big on is the Senate, blah, blah, whatever. This is not Star Wars, dude.
What it could be, and I'm seeing this in wrestling and I'm seeing a little bit of MMA too. watching a sporting event is not a solitary act.
Right.
It is a communal act. It is something we do as groups of people.
This is true.
And when you feel that solitude, you feel that aloneness, you feel out of the moment, you may lose touch with what why you were passionate about it. You may not be passionate about it because you're interested in the interplay of these two teams. You may be in it for the cultural satisfaction of being a part of something bigger than yourself. And when you lose the crowd and when you lose the fans, and I'm sorry for talking over you.
You're good.
But you're losing that element, and people might be scared of that. People might be scared of the fact that they are watching this ostensibly by themselves. And honestly, you're not. Like, the reaction that I look for now is on Twitter.
And
it's
you
on
just
social media.
Words right out of my throat, because that's exactly what I was getting ready to say. Because I watched darn near every Brave game last season. I would listen on the radio and I would follow along on Twitter. It's done you right onto the point. That's exactly you.
No, I'm apologizing that you had to watch the Atlanta Braves.
Oh yeah, well there you go. Hey, at least it's like Selma, Alabama. It's better now, but all right on any level, but but the idea is, I watched the Jets games, I watched the Braves, I watched the Red Sox, and I would follow along on Twitter and go back and forth with cats on Twitter. I'd even go to the Twitter pages of the opposing team, back and forth, have some fun, have some jollies. You are not alone, to quote Michael Jackson. We have that social interaction. People follow the games on Instagram together, on Twitter together, on these other grams and itters. So the people, the audience now, not necessarily my generation per se, but the audience now is an audience who's used to following in a social media world. So that experience, you so beautifully said, that experience will not be lost. People will still have those shared moments. They can still talk about, why did he pinch at him? Why did that or whatever? Oh, that should have been a run play. Oh, so-and-so is trash. Oh, that was a foul. By the way, you get to interact with more people. Doing it with the Jets games, for me, last year, I probably interacted, I think of my 300 followers, I think maybe, I don't know, maybe 80 or so, maybe 80, 60, 80 or so are Jets fans. So, we're back and forth with those cats, and I see these other cats with 20,000 followers, 30,000, whatever. I mean, I don't know if they interact with all of them or whatever, but the point is, that's the biggest group I've ever watched games with. Mm-hmm. And haven't met a single one of them. There's a cat in England, Gus, who's a major Jet fan. He comes over once a year can catch us a couple of games. Follow him on Twitter. It's just, there is this thing that I've now found where I don't feel like I'm watching a game alone. And to be honest with you, what's kind of interesting, and this was very, very, very self-revelatory, I enjoy the game more when I'm interacting with other people. So, and no, I'm not standing next to them. No, we're not sharing a hot dog. No, we're not going to the bathroom together. But still doing it through Twitter, even for me, the antiquated Twitter, that's awesome. And very, 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 very rewarding, and gives me something to look forward to as the games come up. So that experience will not be lost. That experience is not gone away. That experience is going to be there. It's what it is. So there's no need to put Chewbacca and the Millennium Falcon up in the stands while I'm watching the Jets lose to Miami again. It's not necessary. Dude, we're good. Don't. Because inevitably, when you try to manufacture this, what are you doing by manufacturing it? You're giving another element that can go horribly wrong. Mm-hmm. And once that happens, there is no back button, right? The time that someone gets creative. Okay, there's a video game back out in the day. All our listeners are way too young to know about this. Called Grand Theft Auto. And there were cats who figured out how to hack the game to do some very nasty things.
The hot coffee cheat in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Right. So, and you just we're not even talking about that because it's not that kind of show, but just go and you can use the Google machine or whatever machine and you can find it. So some very disgusting, very, very, very not safe for work things could be done in that video game. But people would say, well, you only know that if you know the code. I'm like, no, someone programmed that to happen. So
well, it's a matter of, it's programmed to be in the thing, but it's deep within the layers of the code. Anybody nowadays can learn how to do anything. And when you're looking at one punch or one code or one screw up, if you're building a digital audience, quote unquote, what's to say that someone won't try to put something in there deep within the code, deep within the audience that someone can find, someone can spot shadow, and say, this is and then try to cancel. We're in the midst of cancel culture right now. Someone does one thing that's stupid, and people are trying to bring down the NFL, bring down the network. It's the uncanny valley. Right. If we do that, how do we go back?
Never.
How do you go back to live audiences?
You okay? And because what's going to happen? It's going to be watch Amazon Prime for the video if you want to see Star Wars in the audience. Watch the YouTube TV feed if you want to see Jurassic Park in the fan. There is no cap for that jar. Once you let that Pandora out, her and her buddies, dude, the box it's out.
Also, why are we so obsessed with what's going on in the background?
And that has been my question from the very start of hearing this. First, I thought it was just a bad joke. Then I thought it was just somebody with just very poor taste. Then I realized it was neither. And that when one of the announcers, whose name I'll never ever say out loud, come out and started talking about it, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be a thing. And I just, wait, I'm sorry, don't lose your thought. I am not stay off my lawn guy. I'm not that person. I might not like the new color rush uniforms, but I'm all for something new, but something new in regard to, like, I don't care if you have a 4-point play in the NBA or a 29-point play in the NFL. I don't care. Do it. Because why? It's still competition. Still got to happen. But it's competition that happens on the field, not something being manufactured with a bunch of ones and zeros and a laptop somewhere that can be hacked by whoever. And next thing you know, you got a bunch of strip club video being shown in the back of a football game because guess what? We can do that too.
And if you're more concerned about getting a reaction from someone reacting to a play, then you're not invested in the game in the first place. And that doesn't make you a bad fan. That just makes what you're a fan of not necessarily the sport. If you need, being in that reaction is one thing. Being in an extra innings playoff crowd, there's nothing like it. Being in
overtime in hockey.
Yeah, overtime in hockey. In that three, I don't think I've been to a 3-on-3 overtime yet, but that kind of energy, that kind of pressure, that kind of exhilaration, you thrive off of that. You're riding that high for days. But I don't need that while I'm watching the game at home. It doesn't ruin the experience for me.
Exactly. And oh, by the way, it happening organically makes it even more special. Top 3 for me. The reason that my little cousin Eric got even involved in baseball, one of our first times hanging out, he had their family had this huge, I think it was like the first 80-something inch TV I'd ever seen. It was huge. It was like 80-something inches, fill up a whole wall. And we were watching the Red Sox. And I forgot who they were playing against. So he didn't understand baseball. So I was using that as a teaching moment. Okay, so here's what, because you could see it so huge. Like when I say, okay, he's flashing the signals for a fastball. This is a curveball. Now there's a runner on second. He's going to change up. He's going to do this. Okay, he's going to hit. So I'm walking through the game. And so while we're going through the game, I realized there's a no-hitter being done. So every time they flash up, he sees a 0 under hits for the opposing team. He's saying, "Is that a big deal?" I'm going like, "That's a very big deal." And by the end of it, we watched the last 3 innings standing up in front of this huge TV as if we're standing. It was so big, it felt like we were standing on the field. And after that, he's been addicted to baseball ever since. Another moment was my dad and I went to it was Avalanche Avalanche Dallas Stars. I think it was Avalanche Dallas Stars. It doesn't matter. It was the 5 or 6 or 7 overtime playoff match or whatever.
So this is Patty Waugh and Eddie Belfour.
Exactly.
Holy mother.
And it was like, and my father had never been to any other hockey match before. He had seen them on TV, had never been to one before. And I just remember that moment. It was like, just what it was like, right? And then lastly, but not least, and I'm sorry to say this, I got to bring it up, but it was one of those moments of watching the Philadelphia Eagles play the New York Giants with Mike Vick as quarterback. And I know you know the game I'm talking about. And so I had two cousins. I know, I'm so sorry.
You hurt me.
I had two cousins who basically they liked football, but said, "Look, really don't understand football. Can you kind of walk me through it?" And I remember, and the reason it stands out is because they were babysitting me because I was ill at the time. So we're watching the game, and I'm kind of walking through this what happened, and the score got crazy. And for those of you who don't know, this is like the Miracle at the Meadowlands 2. So it's one of those games where I was calling as we were going. I says, well, now they can technically still come back if something like this happens. They score by this. I said, well, that's going to be really a low chance because my other cousin, she was like looking up the gambling lines on her phone and following and this is before they were doing the percentage to win thing, right? So she's looking up the gambling. Well, Vegas doesn't agree with you. Vegas said it's going to happen, and that would happen. And it was one of those ones. By the end of the game, I'm sorry, but we're like standing up, cheering, like, "Oh, I can't believe it happened!" Yeah, and we still talk about that moment. But those 3 moments were shared, organic experiences in the moment, non-manufactured, with people who didn't even understand the game, but could appreciate what was happening in the moment and learn the game from that. So to try to manufacture that, I'm sure it's going to work for some people, and I hope it does. And I don't think it'll take away from the enjoyment that people will experience. And I hope it does not. But I pray that it doesn't become a situation where all of a sudden somebody's getting fired, someone's losing their job, or they're not doing something because someone does something, I'm just going to say the word, use the S word, forgive me, stupid, by putting something up that, like you said, was going to be spot shouted, hung up, look at this, whatever it is, what this person did. So now all of a sudden that's going to be monitored. And now we got a whole nother set of rules, because you know what happens when somebody does one thing wrong, all of a sudden sets of rules come up to impact people who had nothing to do with it for the next 25 years. So just don't go that far. Please don't go that far. But we're glad you came this far to listen to us on One More Word Pod. And wherever you can find us, I'm Marvin Williams. He's Matthew Ryan. And we thank you so much for taking time to listen to us. You can, wherever you found us, leave a comment, like it, ask a question, give us a shout out, give us a holler, do what you got to do, and we'll get your question. We'll get it on the air. And now we're going to answer a question about the list. This person not only deserves to be on the list, but there's no way they're ever getting off the list.
What did I do?
So, this particular person goes by the name, the nom de guerre of Bobby Petrino.
Wow, we're digging into the archives on this one.
Yeah.
Woo. Go Hogs.
Now what? Okay. what gets someone to my list is generally there's a personal connection to this person that I never or rarely bring up. And I'm not going to do that here. But
I do know of at least one NFL quarterback who played under the parent of a former New York Metropolitans quarterback coach who you do not enjoy.
No, exactly. And we're going to talk about them soon. Believe me.
So I was actually watching something about them yesterday.
So here we have a case of a cat who was given the opportunity on multiple levels to be leader and developer of young people. I'm saying young people, not young men, but young people. Coaching at Louisville, Bobby Petrino, coaching at College Louisville, and is getting paid mega bank. Now we never talk about the money, but in this case, the money has a side picture. He signs a brand new deal because all of a sudden he's the new sought after coach for the NFL. And Louisville goes into their pockets, and their fans and their boosters go into their pockets and sign him to this huge extension with basically no buyout, if I remember correctly. He signs it, and within 6 months, he's coaching the Atlanta Falcons. Thank you for the check. I'm out. He took the job with Atlanta. So now, granted, if I own a franchise and I'm looking at a coach and that's the way they handle their business, I'm going to be nervous about this person. But Arthur Blank with the Atlanta Falcons, giving this guy a shot. He's got to come in. We got this dynamic quarterback and Mike Vick. Things go very wrong with Mike Vick, and all of a sudden now this guy's left there with basically, I think he had 3 backups in his last year with Atlanta. So while he's coaching the Falcons, he's getting looked at, people thinking, well, he's going to lose his job with the Falcons, or he might just leave the Falcons to come back to coaching college, specifically Arkansas, because guess what? That's where homie's from, and that's going to be his team, yada, blah, blah, whatever. And so he assures the owner, Arthur Blank, I'm not leaving, I'm not going anywhere, whatever. And he gives his team this big old speech about being men and standing up and for the name on the front and not the name on the back and blah, 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 blah. And what does he do that night? He ghosts. He leaves a laminated note with 4 sentences on it in each one of the players' lockers, while he goes up to Arkansas to accept the Arkansas State. Arkansas State? Arkansas? Yeah.
Just Arkansas.
Yeah, to accept the Arkansas coaching job. So, okay. All right. Now, you want to start looking sideways. So, now while this is happening, they found out that he did some things at Louisville that weren't exactly cool and kosher and above board. Found out he was doing some other things in Atlanta that weren't exactly cool and kosher and above board, et cetera, right? Okay, fine. Arkansas, they're going to shoot their shot. He'll be different for us. Then there's a motorcycle incident where he gets stopped by a cop on his motorcycle with a woman on his motorcycle, not his wife.
Ooh.
Former athlete of Arkansas who he hired to be something, and found out that he not only circumvented the process to get her hired, but he also diverted funds for her for various reasons. This very seedy sort of thing. And they did their investigation. They did all this other stuff, blah, 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 whatever. Boom, out of work there. And guess what? Guess where he's now? He goes back to Louisville. So,
if you look at who they had coaching basketball at Louisville for a long period of time, it kind of tracks.
I'm gonna say that's like let me go find the 3. Let me go get my basketball, baseball, and football coach and find the 3 seediest guys I can find.
And your biggest booster. Their biggest booster's Papa John.
This guy, for what he has, the swath of damage that he's left, and okay, you know what? Yes, you can give me the speech about it, but he's a grown man. He can make his decision. He can do what he want to do. But at a certain level, like if I had a son and he came to recruit my son, he wouldn't make it past the driveway before I put 2 in his forehead, probably. I'm like, no, dude, stay off my property. You stay off my lawn. Because there's nothing you would say that would make me ever believe anything that's coming out of your mouth. You talk to some of the players from the Falcons at the time, even players from his first stint at Louisville that he recruited and ghosted on, to what was going on in Arkansas with how he was manipulating things around, and it was being supported and allowed and whatever. He hasn't paid back a dime of anything that he's owed anyone because he just doesn't have to. And you look at the millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars he's made for being a scumbag and a sleaze. His name will forever. There is nothing this guy could do to get off the list. And because of what he has done to damage not just the reputation of the sports in which he was blessed and honored to be a stakeholder in and a thought leader in, because no one questions the brilliance of what he brings to the table as a coach, obviously. And obviously it's so well that they'll take all the scum that comes with it, or I should say him being the scum. But the fact that there are kids in college, kids who are now out of college, people who played for him, people who work for him, who now that is their example of what you need to be like to be successful. And that hurts us all. And that hurts us all because they might not have wanted to be that way before. They might have looked at him before and went, oh man, God, that's low down. But guess what? He keeps getting jobs. He keeps getting this. He keeps getting that. It's like he's in the Illuminati or something. So that being said, this guy is on the list, and for balance purposes, as everyone we talk about on the list, we always try to give the redeeming factors. I always try to find something to say positive, Matt. You know that. Mm-hmm. The only thing I could find was Julio Jones made a comment. He said that he would not be the wide receiver is today if not for Bobby Petrino because of how he taught him the game. That's all I got. I couldn't find anything else that made me go, oh, okay, well, no, he didn't give to the Baby Duck Foundation, or, he basically set Jason Bourne down and says, look, dude, stop borrowing people's cars and tearing them up. He didn't do any of that, so I got nothing. I got Julio Jones, and that's it. So that's why Petrino is on the list and will forever be on the list as they who shall not be named.
I'll add it to the list. Putting them there. Writing them down.
So again, everybody, we thank you so much for taking time out of your life to take a listen to us and to enjoy us while you're walking your dog, watering your plants, working on your backswing, working on your front swing, working on your follow through, working on your chipping, working on your putting, whatever you're doing while you're listening to us. We thank you. Again, we thank you for finding us however you found us. Please leave a comment. Please like it. Please let us know that you found us. And any questions you ask, we will discuss. We will bring up. We will talk about, because that's what we do. I'm Marvin Williams. He's Matthew Ryan. Remember, never let Jason Bourne borrow your car.